The year is 1898 aboard the transatlantic luxury liner Titan, and the trap around John Rowland is no longer subtle. The officers have already decided that if he cannot be bribed into silence, he can be broken into uselessness. He is ordered out of turn to a bridge lookout post on a cold, fog-choked night, and when the first officer casually probes him about his old naval training, Rowland quickly senses that something is wrong. The men above him are waiting for him to fail, or ramble, or collapse into drunken nonsense, but instead he answers intelligently, showing that the mind they hope to discredit is still very much alive. Even before the disaster comes, the Titan is already morally rotten. A great steel palace hiding petty deceit, class contempt, and a deliberate attempt to destroy the one witness who refused to lie. Then the drug begins to work. What follows is one of the strangest and most haunting passages in the whole book. Standing high above the darkened decks, with fog all around and the ship driving blindly forward at full speed, Rowland slips into a terrible waking dream. The fittings of the ship become monsters, the fog becomes a void, and his grief over Myra swells into something cosmic and almost religious. A vision of failed love, of light and darkness racing toward him through infinite space, of memory and longing dissolving the practical world around him. It is not merely drunken confusion, it feels like judgment, as though the book itself pauses to drag Rowland through an inward reckoning just before the outer catastrophe strikes. And then, in the middle of that nightmare, innocence appears. Little Myra, asleep and wandering, comes up onto the bridge deck and finds her way to the one man aboard who truly would protect her. It is an astonishing moment. The disgraced sailor, the supposed menace, the man her mother fears, is the one the child instinctively seeks in her sleep. Rowland gathers her into his coat, half dazed, half awakening, and before any accusation or explanation can go further, the lookout cries out from above, "Ice dead ahead." The collision is catastrophic not just because the ship strikes ice, but because of how it strikes. The Titan does not ram a sheer wall and crumple neatly. Instead, she rides up onto a sloping mass of ice, lifts grotesquely out of the water, rolls, crashes onto her side, and tears herself open in the process. Boilers and engines wrench loose from their foundations and smash downward through the hull, while scalding steam fills the engineering spaces and kills the men below in agony. Water pours in, air screams out. The great, unsinkable vessel, which had been described with almost religious confidence at the start of the novella, becomes in moments a gigantic dying beast, groaning, tilting, and filling with trapped humanity that cannot climb what are now walls and ceilings. The Titan is not merely sinking, she is being unmade. And in one of the cruelest ironies of the story, Rowland survives by accident. When the ship overturns and the boat deck is smashed against the berg, the broken end of the bridge is left on the ice amid shattered wreckage, and is there inside it, still clutching Myra? Drugged, cut, dazed, and hardly able to focus his eyes, he becomes the unwilling witness to the Titan's last moments. He can hear the roaring steam, the cries, the bursting compartments, and then the silence that tells him the end has come. Nearly everyone aboard is gone. The mighty vessel that treated smaller lives as expendable has itself become a mass grave in the North Atlantic. Yet for John Rowland, the worst blow is still personal. He has heard Myra's mother's voice in the chaos, and now he has no idea whether she is dead beneath the sea or still somewhere alive in the dark. So the story narrows, suddenly and brilliantly, from thousands of lives to two. A broken man and a child on an iceberg. Rowland tries to call to any boats that may still be near, shouting for them to save the little girl and watch for her mother. No answer comes. He makes a crude shelter from wreckage and canvas, wraps the child in his coat, and lies beside her for warmth through the freezing night. Meanwhile, unknown to him, boat number 24 has gotten away with Myra's mother alive aboard it. She is told that her baby is safe with John Rowland in another boat, and because the officers either do not know better or do not care enough to know, mother and child are carried away from one another under a lie born of confusion, hierarchy, and catastrophe. It is a brutal separation, and it gives the whole survival sequence that follows a tragic ache. Each lives believing the other may already be lost. Morning on the iceberg does not bring rescue, it brings a new terror. When the fog clears, Rowland sees nothing but blue sea, towering ice, and emptiness. Then he spots movement, a starving polar bear coming toward the wreckage. He has almost nothing left, no proper weapon, no strength to spare, no real hope of surviving a fight, but he runs anyway, because the child matters more to him now than his own life. The bear reaches her first and strikes her aside. Rowland meets it with a jackknife. The animal crushes his arm in its jaws, batters him savagely, and yet somehow he manages to keep stabbing until the creature is killed. It is one of those scenes that feels outrageous when summarized, but in the logic of the story, it works because it is not heroic in the glamorous sense. It is desperate, ugly, painful, and half suicidal. Rowland wins only by being willing, in that instant, to lose everything. From there, the episode becomes a grim little chamber drama of endurance. John Rowland drags himself through pain and fever, salvages what he can from the wreckage, rigs a better shelter in a wrecked steel lifeboat, makes a small fire, and feeds the child with water and cooked bear meat. The whiskey he had nearly thrown away becomes temporary medicine. Then fever takes him. For 3 days he drifts in and out of delirium, tending the fire, dressing the child's wounds as best he can, and simply refusing to let the two of them die. It is here that Robertson does something unexpected. The novel stops being merely a tale of shipwreck and becomes almost a spiritual test. The disgraced atheist, all bitterness and intellect and wounded pride, is stripped down to love, pain, and responsibility. What follows on the ice may be the emotional heart of the whole book. Weak, alone, and surrounded by an immense indifferent world of moonlit ice and sky, wrestles openly with God. He argues against divine goodness, against providence, against religion itself, looking at the child's suffering as evidence that no merciful ruler governs the world. Yet when he reaches the edge of his strength, he does pray, not for himself, but for the little girl and for the safety of her mother. That is the key to the scene. John Rowland does not suddenly become pious, he simply becomes unselfish. In helplessness, pride breaks, and what comes out of him is not doctrine but love. The moment is left beautifully unresolved, because almost at once a bark appears around the ice and sends a boat to rescue them. But even John Rowland himself wonders whether this is an answer to prayer or merely an event that was already on its way. The novel leaves the question open, which makes it stronger. So, episode 3 ends with the Titan gone, the world transformed, and Rowland changed more deeply than anyone aboard that proud ship could have imagined. The officers who tried to ruin him have lost their ship. The civilization that trusted steel, rank, and procedure has been shattered by ice and human arrogance. And the man everyone took for a wreck has become the sole guardian of innocence in the middle of a frozen waste. He is battered, feverish, and still uncertain of Myra's fate, but morally, he now stands taller than the entire vanished Titan ever did. In these chapters the ship sinks, but the man begins painfully to rise.